Yeah, we're live. It is 6:53, so I'm even early. They say about the early bird. Like to get a good start on things. Let me see if I can maybe make this a little bit lighter here. See what happens. Yeah, it's a little bit better. There we go. So tonight we're going to talk about the winner has picked up the Nova. So matter of fact, I just posted a video up on him picking up the Nova and us loading it up and discussing what's going on and what's not going on with it. The most interesting thing for me about all of this is the fact that, at least for you guys, you don't know what motor is going to go in this. And so it's kind of exciting obviously there are a couple things going on here. He has a timeline. So now the clock has officially started. So the deal was he has 1 month, and I'm even going to give him 31 days because we have lots of, 30 days has September, April, June, and November. All the rest have 31, except for February, which has 28, except a leap year when it has 29. None of that even rhymes. So, but that's how I remember it anyway. So he has 31 days to put a motor in of some kind, put it in the Nova, get it running enough so that he could do like some sort of smoky burnout. And then, your definition of smoky burnout is, I guess, open to opinion. It's wholly subjective. So if you think that turning the tire a little bit is adequate, okay. If that's the stamp that you want to put on your world, or if you want to do donuts and whatever you want to do, let's see what kind of showman you are. But that was the deal. That there were a number of restrictions, obviously, for the people that won that, and everybody that sent in an email. I selected from that randomly. We did that live, which was kind of fun because we use math, my favorite thing. But the requirements for them sending in their email and entering the contest was that, one, you had to be able to come pick it up around this first part of May. You had to bring a trailer, and you had to be able to come pick it up from wherever you were coming from. There were people from all over the country. You also had to, in 31 days, essentially, from the time that you picked it up, in that time period, you also had to put some kind of motor in it. It doesn't matter if it's a 2-barrel small block or an LS or a big block or whatever it is, put something in it, and you could even hook it up to the trans that's there. It has that Saginaw 3-speed that was originally came with the car was originally a 6-cylinder car. And so you have to put something in there and do a burnout video in less than 31 days. You also could not sell it. Obviously, you can't just turn around and, hey, look, I won this, now I'm going to sell it. That's not what it's about. It's about doing something fun. So the guy that won, it turns out he's not too far up the road, and so I could actually go see him when he's, during the build process. So not only hopefully when he chooses the motor that he chooses to put in it and gets it in and does this burnout video. He also, I can also do some videos with him as he does other upgrades to it, just the way that I would have when we were doing, for instance, when he puts the suspension in, when he puts the different, there were a couple of radiators that came with this. He was excited, for instance, and this is how car guys are, he was excited by the fact that the spare tire was the steel rally wheel, basically, that you put the trim ring in, and I had one trim ring. I didn't have any center caps for the rally wheels, but it had that. But it also had the Krager SS wheels on it, and they were 14s in the front, 15s in the back. They're wider in the back, so it has, it has stance. Still has a single exhaust and stuff, and so we went over all the things I could think of. Even the Black Widows that are, I'm sure, part of the equation from when I got it, and even after that. I have, on a number of times, when I first got the car, I immediately took it over to the spray car wash, and we spent, a lot of quarters trying to go through everything that we could. And then after I took the interior out, we did it again. And then I bought a pressure washer and then did it with a pressure washer again. And every time that I do it, more dirt and silt came out. So I'm sure that process probably is not ended yet. But that should not stop him from being able to put something in there. Because I was told when I got it that the thing ran with the 6-cylinder in it, and then they removed the 6-cylinder. That's the story that I got. I'm hoping that whatever engine he chooses, that it hooks up. I mean, the smart way would be to grab something that hooks up to this Saginaw 3-speed and then just do it. And then even if you wanted to put something later on, something different and exotic, like I talked about a turbo diesel or something weird like a K-Series Honda or something like that, which also would be super cool. Then maybe you could hook your own transmission up to that and just sell the Saginaw or whatever. That's okay. And you can hook all that stuff up. He has some fairly cool, definitely other guys, powertrain that he can put in there, which I'm very excited about. So I might even be able to borrow some of the engines that he has, because they're sitting around right now, and use them for dyno testing on the engine dyno. And there are things that I've not run before on the engine dyno. So that's also very cool. And that's what happens when you meet, when you meet other car guys, is they will have weird stuff that you don't have. I went over today. In fact, I was watching my son, his team play soccer today, and one of the other parents there brought me over, and they have a bunch of Pontiac parts. And so I was helping her identify some of those Pontiac parts, because she's probably going to be getting rid of them. So she just wanted to know what they were. And so, it's just, it's just car people helping car people. It's really just people helping people, which is also good. But the video shows us, loading it up and strapping it down, and there's a lot of there's an hour's worth of stuff that I didn't put in there, because, what happens when car guys get together, we're talking about the potential of the Nova and other things that we've done, and all sorts of things like we talk about here. We go off on tangents on UFOs and different aspects of car culture and pellet guns and skateboards and go-peds and all sorts of stuff. But that's how people are, which is kind of cool. So I'm excited about the Nova going away. But right now, like I said, the clock has started. He's picked this up yesterday. So 31 days from the 14th is when he has to produce this by. My guess, I think I'm a fairly good judge of character, it's probably going to happen before that with this guy. And luckily he has a shop. So they have not only the drive, but I think the wherewithal to get this done in a fairly timely fashion. I'll be interested to see if he puts something in there as a temporary deal and then runs it to do the required burnout video, or if he takes a little bit extra time and puts the thing in there that he might want ultimately to be in there, in the long term, even if it's not perfect, but it's enough. Because we were talking about the gas tank when we were looking underneath. We were talking about the suspension bushings and stuff, which I have, that somebody sent me, and he's getting those too. I forgot to give them to him, and I've got a bunch of stuff down south that I have to get to him also, but that can happen afterwards. But we were talking about the gas tank, and then how we get around this. I said, look, you just put a gas can up in the engine compartment and just run a hose over to a fuel pump, or put an electric pump in there. I said there's easy ways to get around this, just to make it work for what you're making it work for, rather than here's what happens when you decide, okay, look, I'm not gonna just do this halfway. I'm not gonna run the Super Richie 1 gallon gas tank over the carburetor and put a big block in there, a small block in there, and just go out and turn the tires. I'm not even gonna hook the radiator up, but I can do any of that. That's the route that I probably would take. I just make that happen and do it and do the burnout video. And then because the engine, especially if you're not hooking anything up to it, it just comes in and out very easily. So the other problem is if you go the other route, whereas, okay, I want this motor because I want this Nova to have this kind of motor in it, whatever that kind is. I want to put that in. Okay, so that motor might require different motor mounts. Okay, so that's not insurmountable. It's fairly easy to do, even if you just weld a plate, adapt into another kind of motor that already exists, stick weld the thing together and get it in there and make it work. Does it also require a different transmission? When you put that transmission in, it's almost certainly going to require some kind of different drive shaft, some sort of hybrid between the end of one and the end of the other, to say nothing of, this thing probably needs U-joints. The drive shaft length is certainly going to have to be different. So all of a sudden, when you make one change, now there's a bunch of other changes that also have to happen. And all of those changes, although not, terribly difficult or insurmountable, it's just time. And then you're like, okay, well, this particular one, let's say it's fuel injected. Okay, now that it's fuel injected, I can't just put a line over to the, I guess you could take a fuel, you know, an old Mustang or even a Civic or whatever fuel pump and just drop it down in a gas can and have that work. I mean, you could make that work. You could Richie rig it and make that work. But if you wanted to do it and you were doing it right, let's say, okay, well, I've got to now put a fuel injected pump and sock and filter and run a new line because that's all the stuff that's going to happen. I need to do that and I want to run this for fuel injection. Okay, great. Let's look at the tank. Oh, there's almost certainly rust in the tank because there's rust everywhere else. I'm sure there's rust in the tank. So do I replace the tank? Can I get a tank right away, like in short order to replace that one? Can I do the chain and muriatic acid and all that stuff on this tank to make it work? Can I just put another, again, the Super Richie method, just put a plastic fuel cell like I was going to do, sit that in the spare tire well, strap it down, and use that until the other stuff became available and made itself known? Then you could do that. But again, even if you went with the fuel cell and didn't worry about the gas tank and didn't want to do that, didn't want to drill holes in it, weld it, and make it the way that you would do when it's ultimately going to end that way, now the fuel lines are all bad. So you got to run new lines. You got to run a pump. You got to run a regulator. You got to run a filter. You got to run a sock connected to the fuel pump, and then another inline filter. And then you got to run a return. If you're going to run a return off the regulator, that's a whole new line coming back. So all of a sudden, that's the thing, is all of these things become a whole new system. Oh, I want to put fuel injection on it. Oh, great. The motor already has injectors. It might even already have a regulator. Oh, that's great. But it still requires a whole new fuel system, a new tank, a new pump, new filters, sock, lines, all of it. And again, not hard to do. Very easy to run the lines up, attach them to the floorboard, run them through the frame rail, whatever, wherever you're going to do it. But it's just time. And that's the problem with things like this, especially when there's a time element. And this is what happens when guys decide, okay, look, it's not just for this, like for this giveaway thing, but when guys go racing, okay, I want to go to LS Fest and I want to run my car at LS Fest. It doesn't run right now. Okay, I need to get it running. And then I have this amount of time to get it done. All the things that you do, especially if you're going to do them right and not do them part way, Richie rig. If you're going to do that, it's just time. And some of these things, to do them right, just takes a given amount of time. You can't hurry that up. You can't go, I can go do it twice as fast as anybody else. No, there is going to be a fixed amount of time associated with doing that procedure. That procedure is going to take something, putting in a new fuel tank, running fuel lines or whatever. And especially if you're the kind of guy that's like, this thing has to be exactly perfect. Well, in this case, the rest of that car is not anywhere near perfect. So perfect would not be in my vocabulary doing this thing. Doing the Bonneville car, doing the World Challenge car, those things were different. But even those, a lot of times, you get toward the end, you're like, yeah, that just needs to be zip tied in place. That's got to work. We got to go out on the track right now in about 4 minutes. So that just needs to happen right now. So sometimes those kinds of things happen too. But I'm very excited about it because, like I said, the whole procedure, I think, is going to be cool. I'm excited to help somebody, you guys, do this giveaway. It helps me because the car is out of the way now and I don't have to worry about moving it to a place where I don't have room for it. I'm a little disappointed that I didn't get to put at least a motor in it and do a burnout in it, but maybe I'll get to do it. He'll let me drive it when he gets something in it. Maybe we can take it to a local drag strip or whatever. Maybe I can do a motor for it. We can put it in there, whatever. There's the possibilities are endless. But still, it's cool that, I was able to give it away and help the viewers, for you guys all helping me, because, reaching the 200,000 subscriber mark, it's not something I thought was going to happen, and it did, and it's awesome, and it's all working out very well. So make sure to go watch the video on us loading the car up and stuff, and you guys get to see Milo and Maya, who are not in here right now. Usually they're in here laying down. They just kind of hide over here out of the way. But they were supervising, as they always do, and they always want to be outside when the people are there. So let's see what you guys got going on. Speedway Motors has a reproduction Nova gas tank. The Nova gas tanks are not hard to find. There lots of people make them. I just wondered how in stock kind of this stuff is. change gear on the rear end, 350 basic. This one has a 308 in it, and I gave him the the coolest thing about the car, in my opinion, is the build sheet, and also now the screwdriver trunk key. Are people adapting Honda K series motors to GM 90-degree bell housings? I don't know. Dodge, I posted you put a modified 5.3 solely encouraged build by Richard's past videos. An Etch-a-Sketch, those are good. A race Hemi would fit, but only budget race Hemis. Yeah, K24 in there would be super cool. The fuel system that's in it now is pretty junk. It's an organized leak waiting to happen. You don't know that. You haven't seen it. It could be perfect. It's not. A 5.3 turbo from the junkyard with new rings. That would be good. The Nova wasn't the best car. The Dodge Omni is. Actually, probably the 5-liter Mustang is. No, you can buy lots of keys at Harbor Freight for the trunk. I should have put that in the video. I did a little video of it. I'm gonna do that for the promo. Luke, so you're putting a Jag IRS in the back of a 74 Buick Apollo? Yeah, that's a Nova kind of thing. I watched the video before this. The tank sounded like it was full of sand. It did when he was hitting it. A V6 would be good. Buick Apollo. What was the Pontiac version of that, of the Nova? Was it Ventura? No, the Ford guy would like to see you bring the Fox body back. I want to get the Fox body running. I wanted to even just put a stock motor in there, which Sanchez probably has. I have to pull my heads to your 350 to free up a smooth crank rotation. Yeah, sometimes they get rust in them and then they don't want to turn over. Ventura, was it? And if you had a Ventura, its project name would have to be Ace, right? I mean, it's solely perfect. Any suggestions on the Fox body clutch cable setup? I used my factory clutch and cable and quadrant for the whole time I owned the stock one that came with the car, for the whole time I owned it, including all of the racing that I did. The Olds Omega, yes, or the Olds Alpha that came before the Omega. So the trick is, Dan, to go behind a Chevy dealership and ask the techs if they have any core engines that they want to donate. I don't think a GTO was a Nova body. Pontiac did do inline 6-cylinder overhead cam. Did you guys get the Centura there? I don't recall that name. There was an X-body GTO? You guys had some, Dan, at the dealerships? I never even thought about that. Buick Apollo, Buick Skylark. Those maybe they only sold it in Canada. 74 GTO is an X body. Pontiac Phoenix. A Honda K series I think would be cool. A turbo K24 would be really good in that. I mean, obviously it'd make like 1 million more horsepower than the 6-cylinder that was in it. What can I do to increase the head flow? You can port them is really the what to do. But don't they have to make, somebody has to make adapters to go from a Honda K to a GM Trans. 68 Firebirds had the overhead cam 6-cylinder. Don't know much about it. We took one out, put in an SD455. That probably was a good swap. Yeah, they probably used to throw those away. DMC's in the house. I heard that 305 heads are better in 350 engines. They're just smaller chambers so that they add compression, but they don't flow very well. Nova, Omega, Ventura, Apollo. Yep, that's right, Tom. That's how they spell that word. QuickTime makes a K to a T56. So is that's actually a bell housing, right? Because I have a QuickTime bell housing for the RB motor, but it would make sense that they would do a K to a GM Trans. Mountain. So you saw a first gen Firebird with an overhead cam 6-cylinder? Those are cool. Yeah. The 305 heads on a 350 is not a speed secret. What do you think about the 243 heads? Would you think I would just need to mill and maybe port the exhaust port to compete with the 706 power and torque? I have flat top pistons as well as the 5.3. Yeah, you can just mill them and put them back on. I think that they use that overhead cam engine and other stuff besides the Firebird. And a 243 already flows more than a 706 head does. All the Nova needs is a set of chrome liquid slapper bars. It really should have at least traction bars on it, right? I mean, they all had that. Any spark plug recommendation? We do a heat range 8 or 9 normally, and about 19 thousandths gap. An NGK, we've run those a lot. We run Denso Iridiums. We have some Champion race plugs, only because they got a whole bunch of that stuff, I think, maybe from the Chevy race shop or something, and so we've just used a bunch of that stuff because they were free. How did the giveaway go for the Nova? I haven't watched the other video yet. The Nova's been given away, so he has it now. So basically he has 31 days to do a burnout video. The Tempest maybe was another one, yeah. The leaf spring shackles, when we talked about that, were the leaf spring was sitting on the ends were sitting on the frame, basically. It definitely needs bushings there. Overhead cam quadrajet was common in the Tempest body. Have a set of 601 heads for a 350 HO motor, and it was an upgrade for my 350, same valve size and as my old head, but more compression. I ported them. Okay. You can also mill a set of 350 heads. Or deck the block, put a different piston in it. All that stuff is good for added compression. Change the thickness of the head gasket. Getting fuel and spark with no start, but my plug at the very back, so you're going to change them. Okay. Not very often does a spark plug stop the thing from starting. I mean, it'll start on only a couple of cylinders. Richard, have you ever used 3D printed parts? Intake manifolds I have, and intake adapters. I have some 3D printed radius entries for throttle bodies, and we also use them for the inlets going into superchargers. Or you could, I don't know if I've tried one on a turbo, but it would be the same kind of thing. Ever thought of doing Big Bang on random regular motors that we would vote on? Like a 3-cylinder Geo. I have a Chevy Sprint turbo motor, but I'm not going to do a Big Bang on it. I do want to run it on the dyno, though. Do duration of cam limit the amount of nitrous? No. The only thing that limits the amount of nitrous that you can flow is, in my opinion, it's the power output of the NA motor. So for instance, if you have a 200 horsepower motor, you can't run a 500 shot on it. It just is not going to work. So the duration of the cam is going to help dictate how much power the NA motor makes. And then that will help dictate how much nitrous you can run it. If you want to run a 400 shot on a 392 Hemi with a 224 cam, that's going to be, well, that camshaft should be, you should be at like 550 horsepower probably, I would think, on a 392, even with that small of a camshaft. I don't know what the rest of the combination is. 400's going to be a lot. I would try less first, but it's not the duration of your cam that's doing it. It's the power output. If you add more duration and have more power, it will help. If the plugs are black, yeah, they're, well, in California, if you run them on 91, they'll be black even when they're running right. Are ported and polished 862 heads good? Yeah, if they're done correctly. The ones that we ran from Brian Tooley were the first set of LS ported heads that I ever ran, and they work really well because they flow almost 300 CFM, and they'll support a lot of power. Using WD-40 to clean the 350. Yeah, that works. We use to scuff up the cylinder wall. I don't even take the pistons out because, you know, what are you going to ruin if the thing's already ruined? I use a vacuum and we scrape all the stuff out that we can, and then I use oil and emery cloth or sandpaper, light sandpaper like 1000 or 1200 or something, or even Scotch-Brite, whatever I can do to get the big rust off, and then tell the motor will rotate. Did you hear any more about the LT6 engine and what kind of problems they ran into? I really like the idea of a variable intake with valves to affect Helmholtz resonance. I don't know. I don't think it has to do with the intake manifold. Isn't that a flat plane crank deal? what was Anthony asking? Anthony, so back to a cam on a smog legal car. You just have to look for smog legal cams. I don't know what those are. Thank you very much, the General. Joshua, what does TransAdapt have? Do they have adapters for the? I wouldn't think it would be too hard to make an adapter to mate a K series up to a GM style trans, like to that bell housing. Braden, Chevrolet has engineers that can solve any problem. They're really, really good at what they do. I'm not sure what's going on with that motor. If it is, you don't know internally what friction might be. And I'm not even certain that they're not using it, but I thought that I had read somewhere online that that they were having trouble with it. So I don't even know what it is. But you don't know what's going on internally. Maybe there's one side that wants electric motors or some hybrids or something. They don't want that kind of motor. Maybe there is a contingent that wants forced induction and smaller motors. You don't know what's going on there. And there's no way for us to know, because I'm sure they're not going to come out and tell us. Ron, you just sat in on a lecture from GM Engineering. Did they have anything cool to say? GM's been making overhead cam motors for a long time. Lecture by Design Engineering, Corvette. Didn't someone make a kit for Gen 1 small Chevys? Yeah, what was the guy's name? Tommy used to work with him. Peter Dima, I think, is the guy that did that. I haven't done anything with the guys from TransAdapt for a really long time. I've used some of their carburetor adapters, I think. I think that they do those also. I'm wondering with the flat plane crank thing that they did in the GM motor, if they were, because sometimes you look across the pond and they saw that Ford was doing the one in the Mustang in the GT350 and thought, oh yeah, that's super cool. We got to do that because it sounds awesome. I don't know. Santos, I have a number of small block Chevy, if that's what that is. I have a number of small block Chevy cam videos up, so you can kind of see what they do with different. And it's not just those two cams or those four cams or whatever. Just look at the lift and more specifically the duration on those. So I ran some pure energy ones, which I think from comp is actually an emissions legal cam for a small block Chevy, if I remember right. I think that one is. It's a mild cam, more of kind of an RV cam, let's say. It might even be a little smaller than that, but it made good power, and I have that camshaft up. So I think that is an emissions legal cam, if I remember right, for small blocks of maybe certain years or something. So you guys need to look at that. But I did that camshaft, and then I did a very common 224 kind of camshaft, which is like a 268 or something, 268 or 270 or 274 or something like that. And to show you what the difference in power is, and one of them makes more power up top and one of them makes more power down low. Big surprise, like they almost always do. Crash, what are you looking for a recommendation for your 350? There's lots of 350 builds up in the videos on this channel. The comp cam you're talking about would work in an O2 Chevy 4.8 liter. No, it's not a LS camshaft. It's a small block Chevy camshaft. How old does a car have to be in order to be exempt from smog test in California? I think that to be exempt, it has to be from the 60s, if I remember right. Let's see. Gasoline-powered vehicles in 1975 or older, it says, are not required to smog check. I think, however, that doesn't mean that that they can be modified, though. I think that that's a different thing. Engineer warned not to let aftermarket talk you into any mods. Leave the motor stock. I'm sure all the engineers want that. I'm following the 3800 build. I'm excited about that too. I want to get that back together so that we can run the final runs with that. Crash and burn. If you're doing a small block, that pure energy cam is designed for low speed power. Superstar status. Yes, I did a 200K giveaway. For reaching 200,000 subscribers, I gave away a 72 Nova project. And the owner picked it up today, the new owner. I would like to have the comp cam you have for the 3800. That's gone. Ron, it's a super sensitive set of parts. Are you talking about on the new GM motor? Any mod will almost certainly result in loss. I have to think that's probably not the case, because what they made that engine for isn't maximum power. They made that motor with a given power goal in mind, and then a list of a whole bunch of other goals in mind too, that are not ultimate power. What you would do is trade those other things. If you did it right, trade some of those other things in your quest for more power. If you made the heads flow more, if you put wilder cam timing in it, put more static compression in it, put an intake manifold on it that has shorter runners. If you do all the things that you do normally, it certainly could make more power. DMC, if I drove there for a week in my Nova, would I have to do anything before coming? I don't know what your question. I don't understand your question. Rich, both the ZZP cam and the comp cam are gone already. So you want to make 1200 horsepower, Superstar? Yep. Somebody made an engine that you can't modify and make any better. Probably not. Ron, I've watched engineering discussions about engines. I mean, I understand all of the dynamics. I understand how they all work together. What I'm telling you is that even though they're telling you every specific aspect of the quench and the chamber design and the size and the valve size and its relation and the lift and the duration and the RPM range and the crank harmonics and everything else that's amazing about it, the information that they have. What I'm saying is there isn't an engine made that I know of that, other than maybe some racing pro stock motors or something, where, but even those, you guys continually search for finding more and more power, and you can make more power from them. Some of them, like a pro stock deal, the amount of new power that they find is very, very difficult because it takes a lot of testing and a lot of time and money to find just a little bit more, because they're already running at a really, really high specific output. Same thing with Formula One or any of these things. A production engine in a mass-produced vehicle, it is not run at the nth degree, is not run at that level of performance. It's very, very high for specific output for a naturally aspirated production vehicle, and my hat's off to them. I mean, it's I think it's the highest specific output NA motor that's ever been offered in a vehicle, and that's really good. It's just that that's a different thing than the highest specific output motor ever. And so could you do more with this one to bring it closer to this? I guarantee you that if racers got a hold of that motor, that they could make more power. I don't have any cathedral ports. Heads for sale. Yep, flip the pistons. That's always the answer. In pro stock, they can see witness marks on the pistons from the intake valve. It's just kissing them. I wouldn't think that they would want any interference between those two things. Although they are trying to get, as much compression and stuff as they can. Makes sense. I still wouldn't want touching, though. And what that new GM motor needs, obviously, is boost. Pro stock engine go through a lot of valve springs. They run a lot of engine speed. They have a lot of lift. They have really aggressive camshafts to get lots of power. It's amazing. I'd love to put eBay GT45s on my 2003 Ram Hemi. That's good. but don't know of any cheap, easy fix for non-programmable ECU. 2003 should be programmable now. You should be able to have, there should be tuners for those. We've run 03 Rams before with Holly stuff on them. Dan, the Pro Stock stuff is up to 1.2 valves, 1.2 inch valves. I mean, lift. That's a lot. Instead of 800 lift or 900 lift, it's 1200 lift. That's a lot of lift. Sorry, Racer D. I know that you want to argue with everybody, but RPM is what they're using to make power. Because if you can continually make the same amount of torque and you just shift that up in RPM, guess what happens with horsepower? It goes up. Brent, what are the pros and cons associated with Beehive versus dual valve springs for LS applications? The one downside that I see to Beehive stuff is that if you break a spring, it breaks and you usually have the piston hit the valve. If you do that on a dual spring, a lot of times the second spring will save it and you won't be able to rev it because the spring's broke. But at least they won't come in contact all the time. That's one of the things. The Beehive springs are nice. We've used them in a lot of stuff. Obviously, the factory uses them in the LS stuff. They use them exclusively. And they run them both on their very low lift 4853 and early 60 truck cams, and then in the 550 lift stuff too, with the LS3 and those kinds of variants. Todd's in the house. There was a batch of bad springs a while ago that gave Beehives a bad name. Yeah, you can have, you know, there can be problems with the spring itself, with the metallurgy or the heat treating. There's a lot of things that could go wrong with it. And I think that they did have some, I don't remember, was it the 2690 teens that were bad? I can't remember if it was those comp springs that were bad. Just came in from the driveway and the fun started last night. Nice. If you're asking about iron heads, the iron head I think is a copy of a 317 head on the LS, and they'll flow like that and they'll make that kind of power. It's just that they're heavy and they shouldn't be on any LS motor. The 98 Ford 4.2 liter V6 has Beehive springs. Yeah, they're pretty common on a lot of factory stuff. They have good control. They're lightweight. Comp and even the factory Beehives use the same batch of wire. Metallurgy was suspect. Yeah. I almost remember that they had like a porosity problem in what they were doing. It was creating stress cracks or something. I have an ATK crate motor, Cummins small block 350, 2-bolt, 8.6 iron head, 76 low budget motor, going in an 86 Firebird. I'd like to change the cam, something with more lift, stock converter. John, take a look at the 350 that I did that has that pure energy cam and then the 224 cam, and you kind of get an idea between those two. You can even go in between there. There's lots of other small block stuff up there with different kinds of cams, tune port stuff with 210, 218 kind of cams, and those work good too. An aluminum head would be less susceptible to detonation, assuming that everything else is the same. You've done videos on Truck Norris versus new Stage 3 BTR. Are you talking about the truck cam, the stage 3 truck cam, because there's like 15 different stage 3 cams. I don't have a favorite, so that's why I provide you with all the information. You get to pick the power curve that you want. We're thinking of running the hot side in front. That's where we run ours. That's pretty common on LS stuff for them to run it forward. You don't have to run it in back like the Holly stuff does. There's no drawbacks other than as long as it's routed away from everything. You have to run a longer exhaust tubing from the turbo, but running the Y up front and then offset mounting the turbo to one side, like in a truck, is pretty common, as long as you have enough room for the big exhaust from the turbo to run down the side of the motor between the motor and the fender well and go back down under the vehicle. It amazes me. I need to put up a or do a video on. I should go through, like, at the LS would be easy. I think I have enough stuff to do it on big blocks and small blocks too, to do a camshaft like a performance grid kind of thing, like I've seen people do. Well, here this a 200 duration cam does this, and the 205 and 210 and 215 and all the way up, to give people ideas. The problem is, even if I do that, if I give people all that information, they're not going to look at it, and they're going to still ask me what the best cam is. I think Todd, the position of the turbo is not going to be an issue. Yeah, and a lot of people have room, especially depending on what kind of accessories you're running, to put the turbo over there. And the nice thing is that when the turbo is over there and it's the inlet of the turbo is facing forward, you can make a nice duct going over to like the side of the radiator, punch a hole in that, and then get cold air through it, which is you definitely want to have. And Brad, if you're thinking about putting different LS heads on, replace the iron ones. Definitely would be a good idea. And anything else that you put on there is going to work better than the heads that you're taking off, because all the other heads, any other LS head, is going to have a smaller chamber unless you put a 317 on there. But don't duplicate what you had just in aluminum. You could, but anything else you put on there is going to be an upgrade. And then if you're going to turbo it, you don't have to worry about what head you have on there. Ron, one more opinion. If you heard the LT6 double over cam rev, doubt you would mess with it. I'm not suggesting that people mess with it. I'm not pro mess with it kind of thing. The comment was just that you couldn't make more power, and you can. Whether or not you'd want to do that, if I had one of those new Corvettes, I wouldn't do anything to it. I would just drive it around and enjoy it. I might put a turbo on. What about building an LS hybrid for Motown? That could be done again, but it's so easy to make so much power. Power is never the problem. I would only do the Motown thing if I was wanting to do 2,000 horsepower or something more than that. Brian, how much boost can an Iron Duke take? That's a really good question. I'd like to run one of those, and I'd also like to run a North Star engine. And you're working on a 3rd gen Camaro. Those are good, but they do like LSs. Crash and burn. Your Silverado has 799 heads on, aluminum block 5.3, So is it like an 06 or 7 or something like the L33 that I have? The Braden, the F355 definitely needed boost. It would have been a lot better with 7, 8, 9, 10 pounds. Brant, is the 54 45411 about the limit on an LS2? Is a little more piston to valve clearance to play with? Yeah, you can run the 459 or 469 camshafts on those, which are 231 instead of 227 on that camshaft. And not just those from comp, but other things from Texas Speed and Cam Motion and Brian Tooley, other ones from comp. There's lots of good camshafts out there, but something in the 231-ish range at 50 on the intake is kind of where piston to valve starts becoming an issue. 823 or 5364 LS heads. The motor I bought has one of each. They're going to be the same. All those rec port heads are going to be the same. The only thing that's different is that if you have an actual LS3, it's going to have different valves in it. But the valve size is the same. It's just that the weight of the valve is different. Is the new Ford Godzilla engine the next new black? I don't think it's going to ever be even close to what the LS is. There's just not enough of them. And right now it's way more expensive, just like the Coyote. I think that the Coyote will be the mainstay of the Ford stuff rather than the Godzilla engine. Ever worked with Howard's cams? Yes, I have run Howard's cams on some Chevys, small block Chevys, and small block Fords. John, you mentioned a 210, 218 cam combination for the ATK motor is a 288, 298. That's advertised duration. That's actually going to be pretty big for the mild camshaft, or for the mild motor that you were describing. If I'm still thinking about the same one. Richard, what heads are on your truck? Mine are 706s, the best 5.3 head ever produced by GM. Yeah, that's right. I'm thinking about just making all the 799 243 guys mad again and putting 706 heads on my L33 and having it make more power. Doing a head upgrade on it. They sent an Iron Duke to Le Mans, Ron. That's interesting. I would think that the engineers are really, really good. Much more than people give them credit for, I think, in the aftermarket. They think, oh, those guys don't know what they're doing because they don't know how to make power. Oh, if you just told them to make power, they know how to make power. I'm curious that the engineers would send a motor there in a program that they hadn't already run for 24 hours multiple times on their engine dynos and their powertrain dynos, which they have. And maybe they didn't. Maybe, well, when the Iron Duke, I'm sure that they had a powertrain dyno also. Do the Super Richie 706 race head and see if they crack on you. I've only ever had one set that I've seen that were cracked, and they still ran perfect, but they did have a crack in between the two valves. Stock 99 LS1 rods, a mistake for boost? No, the rods will work fine. We've run boost on factory. That's a Gen 3 rod, so I think that rod is the same as all the other Gen 3 stuff that they use on the 5.3s and on the 6.0s. So it should work fine. We've made 1,000 horsepower stuff with that pretty easily. There are a lot of race shops around Le Mans. Yeah, there would be, and a lot of them in England too. You're looking at a thumper cam. Unless you're wanting it for the sound, that's not the cam that I would think about getting for a daily driver 350. That wouldn't be my first choice. Some guys like that cami sound, and that if you want that, then that camshaft will definitely do it. And because they have enough, lift and duration, they also make power. Have you seen the Mercury big block dual overhead cam engines? I have. Those are cool. that was the downfall of NASCAR when most of the shop guys had English accents. They have pretty good race programs over there. If a guy's good, a guy's good. It doesn't matter to me where he comes from. What heads are the best? There's no best head for that. Take a look at for an LY6. Take a look at all. I mean, I have lots of LY6 stuff up because I ran that motor a bajillion times before and after we did the big bang on it. I ran 706, 799, 823 or the stock LY6 heads. I ran Trickflow 225s. I've ran a bunch of stuff on that LY6, and a better head makes more power. So you can put on whatever you want. You have umpteen million choices for stock or ported rec port heads. If you're putting a stock head on there, nothing will make power the way that a rec port head does, a stock rec port head. It will make the most power. It will make a lot more power than any of the cathedral port heads. When you start talking about aftermarket stuff, there's lots of good aftermarket cathedral port heads, which is what I would put on it if I was getting an aftermarket head. I wouldn't get an aftermarket rec port head because the flow rates that those things have, more than likely a cammed 6-liter, especially one with stock piston and valve clearance, can't take advantage of what that has. And so that I'd rather have more average power production from the cathedral port head. So that 225 trick flow or an airflow research, I mean, there's lots of good heads for those. Todd, did you get the Yamaha running? I mean, it should have started up. I want to run an Iron Duke. I want to run one of those, and I want to run like I said, the North Star too. I just like to run stock ones and put boost on them. Any update on the big block? I haven't run that yet. 4V heads for a V10, that would be kind of cool. What is better for the bang? I don't know what that question is. A cast LSX. So you're going to do an aftermarket block? Be specific about your question so I know what you're talking about. Rec port heads, not too sure of the model number, stock intake manifold. That works great. You can make a lot of power. That head, a stock rec port head, will support way over 600 horsepower. Any opinion on the best aluminum block? If you get any aluminum 5.3 block, it's really good. So you rode the Yamaha, nice. Did you adjust the dwell in that thing? Richard, what do you think of the Chevy's 2-liter 4-cylinder high output? I haven't looked at that yet. It's 310 horsepower and 430 foot-pounds. The Mist had the boost turned wicked up pretty far at low speed. Replace the battery and fuel. Runs like a champ. 1,350 rear wheel horsepower with a rear-mounted STS turbo system. What size turbos are on that? Do I need to upgrade to the transmission from a 4L60 or an LY6 swap from an LNG 5.3? Probably so. I don't know that the stock 4L60 is going to handle the extra 100 horsepower or whatever that LY6 is going to do. Yamaha did help with the head development on the SHO V6s, on the SHO Tauruses. One more minute. I always wanted to run one of those Taurus engines with boost. They ran some with superchargers on them from the show shop back in the day. In fact, I think I have an old. I do. Look at that. Look what I found going through my stuff. This is from the show shop. Show Fear. It's from the No Fear guys. This is 1996. And so they have supercharging, big bore assemblies. Lots of cool stuff. Show registry, air intakes, mass air meters. Wow. Compression stroke, intake stroke, basic engine theory. There's a lot of good stuff in here. Camshafts. Man, I have big brakes. I haven't looked in here in a long time. Oh, Powerdine Superchargers, 6 pounds, 9 pounds, and 14 pounds. Big bore engine assemblies. So they did 3 2s out of them. Big monster. And 3 4s. Nice. Big crazy SHO power. A 3.4 twin dual cam. Yeah, I've seen those. I've done a little bit of work on those. Tax out. David, you could run either one of those pumps. You could run both of them, but you don't want one to backfeed the other. Ooh, Casey wants an R5 Turbo 2 Renault and a Shogun, yeah, with the SHO Taurus motor in the back. Those are cool. Okay, guys, I got to get going. Thank you all for showing up. Make sure to take a look at the video that I have, the Nova went away, and as always, more videos coming up. And boom. And we're closing out.